Not the mommy. Two twin brothers live in a secluded house out in the countryside. Their mother has just come home after facial surgery. Her face is completely covered in bandages, her eyes hidden, and even her voice sounds different. She avoids contact, imposes strange and unsettling rules. Little by little, Elias and Lucas start to realize that something is deeply wrong. The woman doesn't seem like their mother anymore, and she doesn't sing the songs she used to. She forgets intimate details about their routine, and she reacts with violence whenever they ask about the past. That's when fear begins to turn into paranoia. They start watching her every move, testing her memories, obsessively investigating, and the more they search for answers, the more convinced they become that the woman in their home definitely isn't their mother. So the boys decide to take drastic action. They tie the woman to the bed and interrogate her, desperate for the truth. They want answers, they want proof, and what the audience witnesses is a terrifying escalation of violence, where childlike innocence turns into something cruel and irreversible.
Fragen uns, wo unsere Mama ist.
But then comes the devastating plot twist that changes everything we've seen. The woman was never an imposter. She was in fact their real mother. The reason she seemed so distant and different was something else entirely. The unbearable grief of having lost one of her sons in a tragic accident. Lucas, the twin we've seen interacting with Elias throughout the film, is no longer alive. He's only a projection of the surviving brother's traumatized mind. A desperate way to deny death and pretend that nothing has changed. At the end of the film, the mother dies at the hands of Elias, who truly believes he's killing an imposter. The worst part is that in the end he escapes from the burning house, and as he comes out of the woods, he finds his mother, meaning he believes what he did was right, but now, just like the fake brother, his mother isn't real either. The strange family. Everything seems perfectly normal when Chris Washington accepts his girlfriend Rose Armitage's invitation to visit her family's countryside estate. A quiet weekend in an isolated property. The welcome is warm, maybe a little too warm. Her father Dean cracks awkward jokes about voting for Obama. Her mother Missy is overly kind, and her brother Jeremy completely unhinged. But something about the Armitage home feels deeply off. The family's servants, Walter and Georgina, both black, act as if they're being controlled by a remote. Their smiles are too wide, their eyes empty and unsettling, and their words sound robotic, completely disconnected from the situation. Chris senses that there's something sinister hiding behind that perfect facade. The tension skyrockets when Missy insists on hypnotizing him to help him quit smoking. And it's there in that seemingly harmless moment that everything changes. During the hypnosis, Chris falls into a dark, terrifying place, the Sunken Place, where he can see and hear everything but can't move, scream, or react. A brutal and powerful visual metaphor. He's trapped inside his own body, reduced to a powerless passenger of his own existence.
Now you're in the sunken place.
As the story unfolds during a party filled with rich white guests who look at him as if he were an object up for auction, the horrifying truth is revealed. The Armitage family isn't just weird. They're at the center of a secret organization called the Order of the Coagula, which performs surgical consciousness transplants. Wealthy white people obsessed with youth, strength, and genetic advantages transfer their brains into the bodies of young black victims they've kidnapped. The victim doesn't die completely. A small fraction of their consciousness remains alive, eternally trapped in the sunken place, forced to watch as someone else controls their body. In the film's climax, Chris uncovers the most painful truth of all. His girlfriend Rose never loved him. She's the hunter, the lure who seduces black men and women with fake affection, only to deliver them to her family's body market. The plot twist of Get Out isn't just a simple story reversal, it's a gut punch that redefines the entire film. In the end, Chris must fight desperately for his life, escape that house of horrors, and symbolically take back control of his own body. The final flight. The story begins with Sam Lott, who's on a work trip with his colleagues when he suddenly has a terrifying premonition. The bridge they're crossing is about to collapse. Panicked, he convinces several passengers to get off the bus before the disaster. Molly, his girlfriend, along with Peter, Isaac, Candace, Olivia Castle, and a few others, manage to escape. Seconds later, the bridge collapses. Sam, Molly, and the others believe they've cheated death, but soon they discover the truth. They haven't escaped it, only delayed it. One by one, strange deaths begin to occur. Candace dies during gymnastics practice. Isaac is brutally killed during an acupuncture session. Olivia falls to her death during a botched laser eye surgery. William Bloodworth, the mysterious funeral director who knows death's secrets, reappears. But this time, he reveals something new. There's a temporary way to escape. If someone kills another person who is meant to die, they can take that person's remaining lifespan. The survivors realize they're dying in the exact order they would have perished during the bridge collapse. Desperate, some try to manipulate fate, steal life from others, even kill those scheduled to die before them. But every attempt to cheat death only leads to more horrific consequences. Peter loses his mind trying to kill Molly to steal her time, but Sam manages to stop him. Believing they've finally escaped the cycle, Sam and Molly board a plane to Paris, ready for a new beginning, far from the nightmare. But that's where the biggest and most devastating twist of the entire Final Destination franchise hits. The plane they board is Flight 180. Sounds familiar? It's the exact same flight that explodes in the first movie. Sam and Molly witness a fight between passengers, a nervous teenager named Alex being thrown off the plane along with several others. Just like in the 2000 original, the camera reveals familiar faces: Terry Chaney, Carter Horton, and Alex Nate, all characters from the first film. Suddenly, everything makes sense. The year isn't 2011, it's 2000. The turbine explodes, the plane disintegrates in midair, Sam and Molly die along with everyone else on board. Everything in this movie happens chronologically before the first film, connecting directly to the Flight 180 disaster that started the entire franchise. The underground house. Tess Marshall arrives in Detroit late at night, under heavy rain, exhausted and dragging her luggage. She has a confirmed Airbnb booking in a nearly abandoned neighborhood, but when she opens the door, she finds a stranger already staying there. His name is Keith Toshko. Polite and friendly, he offers her tea and apologizes for the double booking, but something about the situation feels deeply unsettling. With the city deserted, no hotels available, and the storm raging outside, she reluctantly decides to stay the night. And that's where Barbarian starts playing cruelly with the audience's trust and expectations. Is Keith the real danger, or is something far, far worse hiding in that house? In the middle of the night, Tess wakes up to strange noises coming from somewhere untraceable, until she finds it: a hidden door in the damp basement leading to a secret passageway. What she discovers down there completely changes the film's nature. A claustrophobic dirt tunnel, an old dusty video camera, a filthy bed with rusty chains, and at the end of the darkness, another tunnel, even deeper. The further she goes, the more the movie transforms, from tense psychological thriller to full-blown body horror. Suddenly, without warning, a grotesque creature appears, female in form, but horrifyingly distorted. She's only known as Mother, the product of generations of something unspeakable. Then the story shifts completely to another perspective. Introducing A.J. Gilbride, the arrogant sitcom actor who legally owns the property. Recently disgraced by a public scandal, A.J. visits the house to assess its value and sell it fast. But instead of reacting in horror to the nightmare beneath, he pulls out a measuring tape, calculating how much the extra square footage might increase the property's price. That's when the devastating twist reveals the buried truth. In the 1980s, the house's original owner, Frank, a disturbed man, used to kidnap women off the streets of Detroit and keep them imprisoned in the tunnels he dug beneath the house. From those women, children were born, victims of rape and captivity. And from those children, forced to live and reproduce underground, came more offspring, each generation more physically and mentally deformed than the last. The creature known as Mother isn't the real monster of the story. She's its final and most tragic victim, the broken result of an endless cycle of abuse. She acts on a twisted maternal instinct, caring for her victims by feeding and imprisoning them, repeating the only version of motherhood she ever learned in the dark below. Visiting the grandparents. It all starts with an apparently innocent visit. Two siblings, Becca, a 15-year-old aspiring filmmaker obsessed with documentaries, and Tyler, her 13-year-old younger brother who dreams of being a rapper, take a train to rural Pennsylvania to spend a full week with their maternal grandparents, whom they've never met in person. Their mother, Loretta, sees the trip as a rare chance for a family reconciliation after 15 years completely estranged from her parents because of a family feud. But from the very first night in that isolated house in the middle of nowhere, something feels deeply wrong. The elderly couple are extremely kind, attentive, and affectionate all day long, making pancakes, telling stories, and playing in the backyard. But when night falls, their behavior changes in a disturbingly drastic way. Grandma Doris wanders through the dark house naked, laughing to herself, obsessively scratching the walls, and vomiting uncontrollably. Grandpa John has sudden violent outbursts for no apparent reason, and acts like he's hiding something terrible in the basement. Becca desperately tries to rationalize the bizarre behavior, repeatedly telling her brother it's just old age, dementia, maybe Alzheimer's. But Tyler's gut screams that something much more sinister is going on. As the days pass, a claustrophobic psychiatric ward vibe takes over the house. Meals are tense, the basement is always mysteriously padlocked, and the grandparents get irritated by any questions about the past or about the kid's mother. But the film's crucial moment happens during a video call, and it changes everything from that point on.
Becca.
They've been acting so strange, Mom. We've been recording them.
Those aren't your grandparents.
What are you talking about, Mom?
Where are Nana and Pop-Up? You've been staying with those people the whole time?
With that, their mother immediately calls the police, but the kids are left with the difficult task of surviving until help arrives. Meanwhile, Becca finally decides to investigate the padlocked basement. She breaks the lock, and the devastating truth comes to light. Down there, in the cold, damp darkness, she finds the decomposing bodies of their real grandparents. The two people living with them in the house are not Doris and John Jameson, their maternal grandparents. They're Claire and Frederick, extremely dangerous psychiatric patients who escaped from a nearby mental institution. They broke into the isolated house, murdered the real elderly couple and assumed their identities to live out a delusional fantasy of having a family and grandkids. The discovery comes too late. The imposters realize they've been found out and completely lose it, attacking the children with the intent to kill them, to keep the secret, and keep the family together forever. The house becomes a desperate battleground for survival. Becca and Tyler fight for their lives. The boy uses his athletic skills to take Frederick down, while Becca fights Claire, smashing a mirror into her face. The police finally arrive at the house, capture the imposters, and save Becca and Tyler. The visit's plot twist is deceptively simple on the surface, but emotionally devastating. In the end, when the kids finally return home traumatized, they learn from their mother that she fought with her parents 15 years earlier because they didn't approve of her boyfriend and kicked her out while she was pregnant. She never reconciled and never sent recent photos of the children. That's why the imposters fooled them so easily. No one knew what the real grandparents actually looked like. The Doppelganger. In 1986, a girl named Adelaide gets lost alone at a seaside amusement park in Santa Cruz, California. Scared and disoriented, she wanders into an abandoned attraction, a maze-like hall of mirrors. And there, at the end of the mirrored corridor, she finds something impossible. Another exact flesh and blood version of herself, staring back in total silence. This is the origin of Adelaide Wilson's trauma, a woman who, decades later, lives an apparently normal, comfortable life. Married to Gabe, mother to 2 kids, Zora and Jason, planning a relaxing family vacation. But something deep inside her has never felt truly at peace. She's never been able to talk naturally about that night, never returned to that beach. On vacation, when the family goes back to that same coastal town, the lazy summer calm quickly turns into a nightmare. At night, after a tense day at the beach, a family of 4 stops at the end of the driveway of their rental, completely silent, motionless, simply staring through the darkness. When they finally break in and enter the house, the existential horror is revealed in a devastating way. It's them. Physically identical versions, but deeply distorted, dressed in red coveralls, holding sharp golden scissors, and radiating pure dread. They call themselves the Tethered. Red, Adelaide's doppelganger, speaks in a raspy, broken voice, like someone unaccustomed to using her vocal cords, and tells an impossible story. There was a girl. They've lived hidden in tunnels beneath all of America, forced to involuntarily mirror every movement of the people above, condemned to a shadow life of emptiness. From there, the film plunges into visual and symbolic chaos, as the world outside is simultaneously overrun by millions of human copies emerging violently from underground across the nation, forming apocalyptic human chains. Adelaide fights desperately to protect her family and understand what it all really means. In the final underground showdown, when Adelaide faces her double, the suffocating truth surfaces through fragmented flashbacks. Back in that hall of mirrors decades earlier, she violently attacked the real Adelaide from above, dragged her into the tunnels in chains, switched places with her, went up to the surface, and painstakingly learned to speak, socialize, love, to imitate humanity perfectly. Meanwhile, the true Adelaide remained imprisoned in the underworld for life, gradually losing the ability to speak normally and eventually becoming Red, the leader of the Tethered uprising. But Jason, the younger son, notices something in a disturbing look he trades with his mother. He knows but says nothing. He just pulls down his monster mask and accepts it. The Game Gone Wrong, a luxurious mansion in the middle of nowhere packed with rich Gen Z 20-somethings, and a brutal tropical storm outside, knocking out all communication and cutting them off from the world. It all seems simple and harmless until they decide to play a party game called Bodies, 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 a real-life version of Among Us, where one person is secretly designated the killer and has to kill others by tapping them in the dark without being caught. At first, it's just carefree fun among bored, slightly buzzed friends. But when the power suddenly goes out during the storm, and David, the mansion's owner, actually turns up dead in the yard, the game instantly stops being an innocent joke. Irrational fear takes over, and what used to be a chill party becomes a claustrophobic nightmare. Hysterical accusations and toxic secrets spilling out. Each character hides behind a carefully curated social mask. Image-obsessed influencers, privileged but insecure heirs, pathological addicts to external validation and social media likes. One by one, they turn on each other like trapped animals. Supposedly solid friendships crumble within minutes. Old betrayals rise to the surface. No one can trust anyone, and absolutely nobody seems to be who they claim to be. Sophie and Bea, the central couple, start tearing into each other. Alice and her older boyfriend Greg are quickly turned into scapegoats. Jordan parrots true crime podcasts as expert knowledge. The film drags the audience down a frantic, spiraling descent into growing despair. The tension spikes by the minute. More bodies drop. Greg is killed with a dumbbell, Alice dies from a fall, and everyone watching just wants to know, who the hell is the psychopath? Then at dawn, after total carnage, the twist lands, absurdly cruel and brilliant. After all the bloodshed bloodshed that wiped out the group, the brutal truth is finally revealed through a video on David's phone. There was no killer. The first death, the one that set off the entire nightmare, was a completely stupid accident. David was drunk, filming a TikTok trying to impress his buddies, and he accidentally slit his own throat. Every death that followed, every accusation, every violent turn was nothing but the group's collective paranoia and sheer stupidity. The crazy boyfriend. Woodsboro seems like a quiet small town in California until the phone rings that fateful night. A distorted, menacing voice on the other end, seemingly innocent questions about classic horror films, and a threat that quickly becomes reality. A masked killer in a cheap Halloween costume with a hunting knife, known only as Ghostface, starts methodically hunting down teenagers one by one, following the rules of the very movies they watch. Casey Becker, a popular student, is brutally murdered and hung from a tree in her own yard, a macabre warning to the entire town. Among the potential victims and terrified survivors is Sydney Prescott, a high school student still desperately struggling with the trauma of her mother's death. Maureen Prescott, murdered exactly 1 year earlier. As the bodies of classmates, teachers, and acquaintances pile up in terrifying succession, tension and paranoia explode, and no one seems above suspicion. In a devastating climax inside one of their homes, Sydney finally uncovers the brutal truth.
Please.
Surprise, Sydney. What's the matter, Sydney? You look like you've seen a ghost.
Billy Loomis, her boyfriend, and Stu Macker are the killers, working as a duo. Two seemingly ordinary neighborhood boys, completely obsessed with 80s slasher flicks, who chose to turn the horror genre into a literal functional manual for murdering real people. Billy reveals with rage and resentment that his true motivation is sick vengeance. Maureen, Sydney's mother, had an affair with his father, destroying his family and driving his own mother away. Stu just thinks it's all fun, thrilling, like a live-action movie. Their meticulously crafted plan seemed perfect on paper. Kill Sydney and her father while staging their deaths, frame Sydney's dad for the killings with planted evidence, and become the only traumatized survivors of the Woodsboro massacre, earning eternal fame. But they fatally underestimated who they were up against. Sydney Prescott isn't a traditional final girl who only screams and runs. She flips the script completely. She uses her knowledge of horror cliches and rules against the killers, shooting Billy in the head after he comes back to life like every slasher villain, and dropping the TV on Stu's head, electrocuting him. She takes them out without hesitation, ending the massacre, at least for the moment, because after the success of Scream, several sequels followed. And if you want to see every Ghostface reveal in the franchise, click and watch the video. See you there!